Welcome back. I've got a brand new scene here at 3ds Max. I'm not continuing with the previous scene, and you'll find out why in a moment. Basically, what I have to do now is I have to create the electrical outlets for the house. But instead of creating them inside of the scene that I previously had, I've opted to create them in a new scene, and then I'm going to import them in. This will show you a little bit of a different workflow here when you create things separately and then bring them together in one scene. Okay? So let me show you what I'm going to model here. I'm going to go to the view image file here. I'm going to go to my scene assets, images, and like I've done, I've collected lots of reference material, lots of reference images off the internet for modeling. So what I have here is this. This is pretty simple. Pretty sure everyone has seen this before, an electrical outlet, pretty simple electrical outlet here with two slots for plugging in some kind of electrical appliance or electronic device or something like that in your home. So I'm going to build these. Seems like something pretty simple, but it's got its own little challenges to it. We're going to build one of these, which is going to be the master model. We're going to import it back to our previous scene where the house is, and then we're going to place it all over our house in areas that, well, that logically and visually seem to make sense. But we'll worry about that later. Right now, I want to model this out. So how can I model this out pretty easily? Well, so far I've been looking at things and modeling them in 3D while just visually eyeballing these things and using my mind's 3D eye to model them out. In this particular video, what I'm going to do is something a little bit different. Let me close this image out. What I want to do is use the image that we just saw a moment ago, and I want to place it in the background of my viewport to work as a guide, literally as a reference guide for my modeling. Okay, it's going to be a blueprint basically that I'm going to use. So how do I do this? Well, let me just go ahead and show you instead of just telling you about it. I'm going to go up here to my front viewport up here. Alright, I'm going to maximize this one. I'm going to hit Alt and B on the keyboard. That's B for boy. That's going to open up the viewport background options here. Okay, and with these options we can do a few things. I can click on the Files button here, and then I can look up my electrical outlet. Let me see which one it is. This image here is the one I want to use. You can use any image you want. So I'm going to use this one that I've collected from the internet. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tell this thing to match the bitmap. Okay? Because if I leave the default options, watch what happens. If I hit OK, there's my image in the background. But as I pan and I move around, you notice that the grid and everything moves around, but the background image doesn't. And let me just show this to you a little bit better. You don't have to build this box. I'm just going to build a box very quickly here, just to show you what's going on. I'm not moving the box around. All I'm doing is panning my view around, but you notice that the electrical outlet image in the background is stretched. Okay, so first of all, it's not fitting the right aspect ratio of the original image, and it's stretched out. It doesn't look very good, right? Okay. So let me hit Alt and B again to go back to those options. This time I'm going to tell it to match the bitmap. And if I hit OK, now you see that it's not stretched anymore. Now it has the correct aspect ratio, but it's still loose. It's not stuck to the grid, which is not exactly a good thing. So what I'm going to do is go back to the Alt B, the viewport options, and this time I'm going to tell it to lock the zoom and pan. Okay, so with match bitmap selected and the lock zoom and pan activated, I'll hit OK, and now you can see that when I zoom in and out and when I pan in my front viewport around, the image stays in place. This is going to make it easier and more feasible to go ahead and model off the background image. Of course, the grid's in the way, so I'll just hit G on the keyboard to get rid of the grid. Alright, so let me delete that box. I don't need it anymore. So now the idea is just to use this front viewport, and you can actually trace, just model over this and create the electrical outlet very easily. Alright, so I'm going to do this with a plane. So I'll go to plane, and I'm just going to go ahead and click and drag here just to create the overall plane right there. Then I'm going to go to the Modify tab over here. And you can see that I have a lot of segments here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to knock down the length and the width segments to 1 and 1. Okay. And if I want, I can activate see-through mode, Alt X to do that very quickly. And in the background, we can easily see our electrical outlet right there. Okay, if I go back to the perspective view, this is what I have. Alright. What I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this to an editable poly, and I'm just going to start modeling away at this guy. And this is going to be pretty easy. First thing I'm going to do is take the polygon that I have here, and I'm going to extrude it. And I'm going to pull it out slightly like this. Okay? And then I'm going to scale it down on itself a little bit. So it ends up something like this. Okay? That's fine. Then I'm going to go back to the front view here. It's a little bit hard to see, so we can go to wireframe mode, or you can keep see-through mode, whatever you want to do. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to the inset tool, and I'm just going to visually inset this. Now I know that I have to go ahead and just adjust this a bit, so I'm going to adjust this polygon. This polygon is going to be the basis for basically this area here. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to vertex mode. I'm going to select all these vertices that are here in the corners, and I'm going to chamfer those to make them nice and round, something like this. I'll hit apply and chamfer them again. Do something like about this. So basically we have these 4 vertices that make this nice curved corner shape right there. I'll hit OK. Now we don't need all these extra vertices that we've created, so I'm going to take all those extra vertices and I'll hit collapse, and I'll do the same over here. Take those, collapse those, take these guys, collapse those, and finally the last corner here, collapse those. Okay. So I'll go back to polygon mode, and I'll select this new polygon here that now has the curved edges, curved corners. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to inset this one too. I'm going to inset just a little bit, something like this. I think will work just fine. And the reason I'm doing it like this is because there's now this sort of outline here of polygons, which you're going to see in a moment what I'm going to do with that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the grow button. And then I'm going to deselect the center one, and you can see that I have this sort of border here of polygons that I've already created. And I'm going to go back to the perspective view here, and I know that that creates basically that little groove that goes inside the plastic there. And what I'll do is very simple. I'll just extrude, but I'll extrude it inward into itself, so basically negatively. And the amount I push it in is pretty much up to me. I'm going to make sure it's far in pretty good. Something like that will probably be good enough. Okay, so we end up with something that looks like that. See, just like the image. So let me go back to my front view here. I'll hit OK. And now what we need to do is basically create the geometry and set up the tessellation here to create these sort of plugs. So what I'll do is I'll select the center polygon right there. I'm going to go up to the Graphite Modeling Tools. I'll go to Subdivision, and I'll go to Tessellate. I'll hold down Shift and click to open up the options. You can see here it's creating some strange type geometry here. Basically, it triangulates it to the center here, which is obviously no good. But that's not going to be much of a problem. Let's hit OK to let this know that that's exactly what we want to do. And I'm not interested in these edges here that make these X's. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of those extra edges. Control backspace to get rid of that. Just going to go into my perspective view here to make sure that I didn't ruin the geometry. And it looks like it's still good. Okay, perfect. So I'll go back to my front view here. And what I want to do now is take maybe these 2 polygons right here. And I'm going to go to the inset options. And I'm going to inset this. However, I'm going to inset it by polygon, so it makes a couple of separate polygons. And you can see that it's messing this up over here, where it's kind of just making those vertices right there kind of penetrate into each other. But that's not a problem. I'm going to fix that in a moment. Just going to go ahead and kind of scale this down a bit and hit OK. What I'll do is I'll go to vertex mode, and I'll select all these corner vertices there, and I'm going to collapse those. Do the same thing on this other side. Collapse those. Now you can see that they're kind of skewed right there. So what I'll do is I'll just select those vertices as well as those. I'll go to the align tool and I'll align this in the Z, which didn't work out, so I'll align it in the Y. That works out just fine. I'm going to take these vertices right here for that edge, and I'll just go to align in the X. Same thing on the other side here. Align in the X. And now we get ourselves these perfect squares, basically, or rectangles, I should say. So now all we need to do is basically take this polygon here and just start to move it and get it into position here. Move the edges of it to match up with the background image there. So something like this. And just get it right there. Looks pretty good. This is going to be a detailed object that gets viewed from pretty far away. We're never really going to zoom into this. So don't worry about it being super detailed unless you're doing a close-up of something like this. You shouldn't really worry about it too much. Okay, so now let's try to create the geometry for this sort of little dome shape here, okay, to make that little hole. So to do that, it's actually not going to be too hard. What I'll do is I'll use these three edges that are right here. I could probably just get away with this. I could probably just connect that thing once, and then with that edge selected, I can go to align and align this in the Y to flatten it out. Place it about down here. I'll take those three edges again, and I'll probably just connect that and flatten that in the Y as well, just to make the top portion right there. And what I'll probably do here is, let me see, I'm going to take this guy here, and maybe I'll align this one. Or actually, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you a different tool with the graphite modeling tools. Let me take the center edge here, control backspace to get rid of it, and I'm going to take this one up here, control backspace to get rid of that one. I'm going to take the one on the bottom here, control backspace to get rid of that one. So I'm going to end up with basically one polygon here. It looks kind of like a trapezoid. Well, with this polygon selected, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to my graphite modeling tools. I'm going to go to the polygons tab here, and you have this button here, GeoPoly, and you can read the description there of what it does. Basically, when I hit that, it's going to try to even out the vertices of this and try to make a geometric shape. In this case, it's trying to make a square, okay? But it doesn't make a perfect square, so we're going to go ahead and help it out. I'm going to take this edge here and go to align and align that in the X. Take the opposite one, align that in the X. Take the top one, I'm going to align that in the Y. The bottom one, I'm going to take it, align it in the Y. So when you have ourselves an object with nice even sides here. Okay, so I'm going to take this edge, I got to move it here. This one I'm going to keep at the very top up there, and that should pretty much, yeah, that should pretty much do it. So I'm going to take these two vertices at the corners, and I'm going to try to chamfer those, see what I can do with that. I'm going to chamfer it to about maybe this much. I'll hit apply, and I'll chamfer it one more time to make a nice curved sort of dome shape there. I'll hit OK. Same thing as before. We're going to take all these extra vertices that were created that we don't need, and we're going to collapse that stuff. So there we go. It's collapsed, and now we have ourselves this perfect sort of dome shape, which is going to work out real good for creating that little hole right there, that little plug hole that goes right there. Okay, so with that done, I would say that I'm pretty much finished creating this part here. So actually what I might end up doing is taking all these vertices and moving them down a bit just to get the shape down a little bit better of this thing. Okay, I'm going to say I'm happy with that. I'm not going to be too picky about it. So now that I have that part, what I can do is I can rip this area of geometry here, and I can copy it and reuse it down here. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that. Let me go back to the perspective view here. I'm going to take this polygon and this one, and I'm going to delete them because I don't need them anymore. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take basically all of these polygons, and it might help if I go into a front view to do this. Okay, I should have all of them selected right there. If I go to a perspective view, I can see that yes, I do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move these guys and then hold down shift to make a copy of that. And it's going to ask me if I want to, clone it to an object or an element. I'm going to go with, let me see, I think I'll go with element is perfectly fine. So I'm going to move this down like this. Let me go back to my front view here. And this is going to have to be down here like this. So I'm going to try to rough it out, get it into position. It's going to be something like this, perfectly fine. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take these vertices here, and I'm going to collapse those. I'm going to take these vertices here and collapse those. Let me go back to the perspective view here, just to show you what's going on. Okay, now I can see that now I can connect the top part up there perfectly without a problem. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use the target weld in vertex mode to target weld that right there, target weld that right there, and target weld this right there. And it fits perfectly, as you can see. Okay, down here of course doesn't fit perfectly. So let's go back to the front view here and see what we can do to fix this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take these vertices at the bottom. I'm going to move them up. You can see we have a triangulation problem there. That's it's really no big deal. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this entire section here and move it up out of the way just for the moment, just to give me some room here to breathe. And I'm going to move this up like so. Okay? I'm going to go back to the perspective view and I'm going to see what I have to do here. I'm going to take target weld and I'm going to weld this vertex right there. I'm going to weld this vertex probably right there. Yeah, I guess that'll work. I'm going to weld that one right there. Up here, I'm really not going to worry about this too much, though. If I wanted to clean this up a bit, I could target weld that there and target weld that right there. And then right here we have these holes. Well, let's take the border here of this and cap it, and that'll seal up that border right there and give us pretty nice clean finish there for that object. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is go back to the front view, and you can see I need to take basically this polygon that's right here and move that guy down like so, so it's back in it's supposed to be, kind of rough in there with the image. And that is pretty much going to do it for right there. I'm not going to model this little center piece, whatever this thing is right there. You could use if you want to take some time out and model that out using the techniques that we just saw, you can go ahead and do that. Be good practice for you. I'm not going to go ahead and do that. Don't really feel I need that detail right there. So now the next thing to do is to basically extrude this stuff in to finish this off. So I'm going to take these polygons. They have to be extruded in, and I'm just going to use the extrude options here, and it's already going to extrude them in based on the previous options I used, which is perfect. It's pushing them into the model, which is good, and I'll hit OK, and that pretty much takes care of itself. Now for the back here, to finish it off, just go to border selection mode, select that border of edges, and use the cap to basically cap that off with the polygon, and we're pretty much done. The only thing you would have to do now, if you really want to finish this off, is to take this edge here, select its loop, so you have basically that loop of edges that borders around it. Go to the chamfer tool, go to the options, and chamfer this out a bit, giving this a few segments, maybe about 4 segments is good enough, just to make that a nicer finish right there. And if I go ahead and render this out, you can see what I end up with. Obviously I need to fix up the shading normals right there, so I'll actually go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and select all the polygons here. I'll go to the properties and hit smooth 30, and that should fix it for me. There we go. Now that those edges are smooth out right there, so it doesn't look all hard and nasty, and that looks pretty good. So I got myself a pretty nice looking power outlet right there. That's pretty fairly detailed. You know, rendering this out from mid-distance and even from far away is going to look pretty good. Okay, so I've got this done, but right now, unfortunately, it's in its own scene. So how do I get this back into the with the house? Well, it's pretty easy. All I have to do is select the object. Okay, we'll go up here and hit the 3ds Max file button up here. Okay, go down to export, and we'll go to export selected. We have a few different options here. The one we're interested in is export selected. We'll click on that, and that'll take us straight to the export folder of our project directory, which is perfectly fine. And I'm going to switch to format. We have lots of different formats to use based on your studio, where you work at, what project you're working at. You may have to choose a different format based on your pipeline or what you're told to use. Okay, so there's lots of different formats. FBX is one of the most popular formats right now. You can also use Collada, lots of different formats. I'm going to use OBJ. Okay, that's a pretty popular format, pretty universal. I'm going to give this a name. I'm going to call this power_outlet, and I'll hit save. And it's going to give us some export options. I'm going to leave all these default options. I'm going to make sure that faces is set to polygons, not triangles or quads. I like to set it to polygons simply because I find that doesn't mess up the geometry as much as if you go with triangles or quads or polygons. Basically, I don't want it to retriangulate the mesh. I want it to leave it alone. We also have some presets you can choose. So if you're working with, say, Blender or Cinema 4D or even DAZ Studio, you can use different presets. I'm just going to keep it at none because I'm just going to export this from here, but I'm going to continue using it in 3ds Max. I'll hit export. We get the export statistics here, and then we'll hit done. And it looks like nothing happened. Well, you want to make sure you save out your scene, okay? All right, I'm going to end this video here. In the next video, I'm going to go back to the house, and I'm going to import this in, and we're going to populate our scene with power outlets.